Aloha, everyone. Welcome to the Los Angeles Asian Pacific Film Festival produced by Visual Communications. My name is Anderson Lay. I'm one of the program consultants for the festival. I'm zooming in from Los Angeles, California, and I want to give the proper land acknowledgement to the native peoples of this land, the Tongva people. So I want to say that before we start. I'd like to thank everyone for making this festival possible, especially the Academy for Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, Sony Pictures Entertainment, Comcast, NBC Universal, California Arts Council, SAG-AFTRA, Producers Industry Advancement and Cooperative Fund, the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA, and HBO, and of course, and finally Warner Media. And before I start, I want to also acknowledge also the festival staff who are doing incredible work here, pivoting to this running a festival in this pandemic and going all completely virtual. They're doing amazing work and presenting some amazing films for all the festival audiences viewing from Southern California and other parts of the nation. So thank you for their hard work. I want to, as we start the Q&A for the Legend of Baron Toa, I'd like to also acknowledge and welcome the director, Kyle McNaughton, zooming in all the way from New Zealand. I know it's very early in the morning for you, Kyle, and thank you for joining us for this special Q&A for your film, a wonderful film, The Legend of Baron Toa, which is a lot of fun. And so, you know, I want to just start off basically, how did you get involved with the project? And also, first of all, before that, you are a man of many talents. You are the director of this film, but you also have a very varied background in stunts and also in acting. So can you maybe start talking about your background first before you, how did you, and then before signing on board on this film as the director?
Sure. Kia ora, Anderson, and kia ora koutou. It's awesome to be here. Like Anderson was saying, it's great to see that that the festival is going, even though it's virtual. I'd love to be there in person. It would be awesome. It's my first feature. So I guess at the turn of the century, so early 2000s, I came out of drama school and wasn't getting any acting work, and so I got into stunting. Started doing some stunt work and did some stunt work on Power Rangers. It's the ongoing series that's been shooting here and since forever. Really, did some work on that and on a couple of feature films, just tiny roles falling out of trees and doing some little fight scenes and stuff like that. It's which was really cool. I love the stunting community in New Zealand. Following on from that, I managed to get a role on our local soap opera, and was on there for 4.5 years, and from there kind of really got an itching to be behind the camera, and made some really good relationships with people in the industry during that time, and started making my own stuff. My wife and I, who we basically formed a production company called Brown Sugar Apple Grunt Productions, and started making stuff, started pitching stuff, and we managed to get a few things up off the ground. And since then, over the last 10 years, I've been directing a lot of TV and web series stuff. I think it was quite a good time 10 years ago when the web was the place to start creating new and kind of riskier content. And so dipped my toes in comedy, worked with some really good collaborators, and always wanted to make an action movie. My kind of instinct or love of kind of Hong Kong action films, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, as well as, the classic 80s action films, Lethal Weapon, Commando, all of that kind of stuff I really loved. So when the script came across us. It was from a collaborator who had been. There's a spec script. He was writing it with a producing partner of his. His producing partner was going to be the lead in it. But when we picked up the script, we really wanted the perspective of the script to change. It was written for a Pākehā or Caucasian lead, and we wanted the film to be. I mean, when I say we, me and Kerry, we wanted it to represent our world.
And Kerry, your producing partner, Kerry worked.
Yeah. We wanted it to represent our world, which was much more diverse and brown.
As you say, and brown.
Yeah, ultimately, and the writer John Argyle is part Tongan, and so we encouraged him to revisit it from a Tongan perspective, and he did. He really took it on. He brought a lot of his own, I guess, experiences from growing up. He's a huge wrestling fan, and he created the Barontoa and this whole world kind of based around where he grew up, but with these semi-larger than life characters. But the initial seed of that idea, which was an action film set in a cul-de-sac on a low budget that has paint cans instead of guns and foot chases instead of car chases, was the thing that really appealed to Kerry and I in the very beginning. Yeah.
So you basically, like you said that this is essentially a spec script, essentially written not necessarily for like a person of color or like a brown community, like something like that. So, but then you infuse it with your own kind of flavor and your own background and whatnot. So, and then when you came on board to adapt that, was it pretty? What was the process when it comes to trying to neighborhood, the right cul-de-sac? Because a lot of it takes place all on essentially a street or essentially a cul-de-sac, right? So was it difficult to find that type of neighborhood when you were kind of like location scouting? And then also kind of like going into a community and going, hey, we're going to shoot this movie. Is it cool to like shoot in your backyard?
Yeah, it's that's basically what we did. But the writer grew up in Mount Roskill, which is where we ended up shooting, and we ended up shooting, kind of 2 streets over from the real Kinloch Ave where he grew up. The cul-de-sac that was in his mind when he was writing it was based on his Kinloch Ave, which was it was quite a short cul-de-sac, but very much a keyhole shape. So very symmetrical kind of thing with the duplex at the top of the cul-de-sac. And so we did have to search for a little while to find the perfect cul-de-sac because we needed that. We did well. I really liked the idea of it being symmetrical in that respect, but also having that main house right in the center of that, right at the top of that, the keyhole was really important. And so we ended up shooting not far from where he had imagined the place. And funnily enough, that cul-de-sac has been featured in a couple of other films, most notably in New Zealand, Sione's Wedding, which is another full Samoan feature.
Yeah. I mean, in the US it's called Samoan Wedding, but
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And so when we were shooting, we had an amazing location scout, Te Whale Matawheo, and he locked in that street very early on. So I think even before we had production funding, we went in to get production funding, saying we've got the street, we know how we're going to shoot in there, and basically we couldn't pay for all the residents to go and stay at a hotel for 6 weeks, unfortunately. But so everyone was going about their day-to-day lives, and we would yeah, we would shoot around their comings and goings for the most part, which wasn't easy. But they were really welcoming to us. They got a little bit annoyed with us at times, as you would
Sure.
if you've got a crew outside your house on and off for 6 weeks.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Can you not mow your lawn today, this morning between 10
yeah,
a.m.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean that's cool. I mean maybe because of the prior experience of shooting other films like Sione's Wedding, maybe they were used to that. But regarding kind of like again, what was great about this film, I like that you infused. I mean your kind of inspirations is from like 80s action movies and stuff like that, Jackie Chan type of movies. And there's a lot of action in this film. It's a lot of and it's all really. I mean, even though it's, as you say, low budget, I think that the action is very top notch, and it's like looks pretty dangerous. Obviously, this is your kind of your stunting background, your stunt performance background. I mean, can you talk about kind of like how was the process of planning the all the just from not only the fight sequences but also the chase sequences, the foot chases sequences, because you're running over on top of roofs and you're breaking into sliding doors and whatnot and going through different hopping over fences. Can you talk about kind of the process of navigating and planning all that out in kind of like this physical? I mean, basically a real neighborhood.
Yeah. It was, and that just touching on the chase sequence, our location manager literally found the next street over and got the permission from all of the people for us to run in their backyards and shoot the whole sequence along a row of houses. So it's actually, rather than finding a bunch of different houses, that the chase sequence takes place in kind of in reality. But yeah, the John Argyle is very detailed actually with his action sequences. I know that
in the script.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Some writers might go, a chase ensues,
right.
which takes place throughout the backyards of the neighborhood,
Sure. Yeah.
and then move on to the next scene, kind of thing. Some scripts may be like that, but
yeah.
his was very particular about what was happening in the scripts. Of course, when you get on location, you're going to adjust for what you end up. So the jumping from shed roof to shed roof was something that we invented because that was there. Also, budgetary restrictions. In the script, there was Fritz comes face to face with a goat, and the goat headbutts him. We couldn't afford the goat. The goat's been featured on The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and very expensive goat. Well trained, but we couldn't afford it. And so planning wise, it really exciting to work with the stunt team that I'd kind of found in 10, 15 years ago, when I was kind of getting into the stunt community, and being able to work with them again after they'd gone on to do so many big things, like X-Men films and all the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit and everything, but going on to stunt coordinating stuff and in Hollywood, and they were so keen to be back in New Zealand and making a kind of proper action film. So they couldn't wait, and they had a long pre-production period where they would rehearse with all of the cast. And Uli basically did all of his fights, and I think I was actually talking with the stunt coordinator Augie Davis the other day, because he's on this TV series I'm working on, and we were thinking, and I think his double was only used in maybe about 2 shots.
Wow.
So Uli not only did all his fights, but all his stunts, most of his stunts. Yeah,
Uli Latukefu, who is like the lead, plays Fritz, right? I mean, I mean, that guy's ginormous. Who's his stunt? Who's his double? He's like looks like he's 7 foot, but But I mean, talking about, I mean, this is a perfect segue into kind of the casting process. I mean, we see a lot of familiar, Maori Kiwi faces in your film. You know, Nathaniel Lees, who plays the uncle. He was in the Matrix movies. Of course, John Tui, who plays Baron Toa, as well. But Uli, we've seen him on that Netflix show Marco Polo and other things. He's in the upcoming Taika Waititi movie, and also just yesterday it was announced that he's young Rock in the
Yeah.
the young the Dwayne Johnson comedy that's based on his life. He's cast as the young Rock at age 20 something in football or something as a football hero. But anyway, with Uli, he's actually Tongan himself, but he's not. But he's actually not from New Zealand, but from Australia, right? So, can you talk
Yeah.
about kind of the casting process? I mean, when you got the script and then the character Fritz, what was in your mind's eye? Was it always going to be someone like Uli, or was it someone different in that sense? Yeah.
Yeah, we knew we needed someone with leading man
Yeah.
stature. There's that X factor, and we knew that they had to be Tongan. And so in that there's only a kind of a small pool in a way. Who we were looking at. We actually looked at John Tui for Fritz early on as well, but we kind of knew we had to go in a certain direction, and we found Uli on online. We do a search for Tongan actors, and only a few pop up. And we got him over, as well as Jay Langaya, from who lives in Sydney as well, and they came over, and we got Nathaniel and Siobhan, and we did a table read. And in the earlier drafts, Fritz came across on paper, probably still comes across as a real arrogant prick, and it was one of our concerns that he was going to really rub people up the wrong way if played the wrong way. Sure. And what Uli brought was this kind of empathetic quality. Is just super charming, and but also just his understanding and his craft. Uli's a very trained actor, and just with his craft as an actor was able to find the nuances, I think, in Fritz's performance. And from that table read, I think John Argyle, the writer, was able to kind of craft Fritz in a better way that would also suit Uli. So I think that was a really, really good process, by casting him quite early, or knowing who he wanted fairly early on. John was able to see and then rework some moments in the script to see what was working for the actor who would eventually end up playing him. But when we decided that we wanted to cast him, realized he was 6'6", and then realized we had to find a bad guy who was bigger than him. So we had to look around for and eventually found Ray, who plays Tahu, who is 6'10", and yeah. Land of Giants.
Yeah. Can you talk about like more of the there's the action comedy aspect of it, especially the stunts and stuff like that. But there's a lot of course, obviously wrestling and wrestling culture infused in it. So can you? And I just me. I mean, I'm a child of the '80s, so like WWF or WWE, WrestleMania, all that stuff was kind of part of my childhood. Can you talk about kind of like just infusing kind of that the wrestling? I just love the wrestling kind of like tropes in it, in the sense of like of course you have Bartoa, who is the hero, but you have the heels and all that stuff. Was that also? Did you infuse that, or was that always all those like kind of ingredients were always in the script from the get-go?
There was. It's interesting because Baron Toa to quite late in the piece. It wasn't really until our shooting draft we realized we needed to see more of Baron Toa. So before that, he was a ghost. You know, he was the ghost to Fritz. You know, that Fritz would carry on his shoulder. We would talk about him. We might see him on the TV screen, kind of thing. But yeah, we didn't know a lot about him in terms of the audience. And so it wasn't until a bit later, until after we cast John Tui, that we realized we really need to see a lot more of this character. So we wanted to, but I guess in saying that, that's kind of less about the wrestling and more about the relationship of father to son, kind of relationship. In terms of the wrestling aspect, it was, with John Argle's writing. He had written all the fight scenes to include wrestling beats, wrestling moves, and you'll see little moments where, yeah, we'll hark back to certain wrestling moves that, maybe were big in the 80s and 90s. I don't watch a lot of wrestling now, but I did grow up. I mean, it was everywhere. It felt like it was everywhere, you know, like DDTs,
Yeah.
suplex, and all of that cool kind of stuff. I mean, it's, when we were on set and in rehearsals and stuff, it was just kind of so much
Yeah.
fun playing around with those moves, and the stunters were like, "Oh, can we do all these moves on concrete?" That's
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. I was gonna ask. It's like, because going back to kind of the fight coordination. I mean, of course, wrestling moves are great, but it's all in a ring. I mean, this is all on a street on concrete. Like so, yeah. So I mean, what was the process of? Because there are a lot of martial arts in it as well,
yeah.
but also those kind of like key wrestling moves like the DDT and all that stuff. What was the process of planning out that? I mean, you with your stunt background, I'm sure you were probably intimately involved with kind of the choreography as well. But I mean, you were shooting on a very truncated schedule. So how did you all come together? I mean, you weren't just show up and let's figure out the fight. You actually planned it out ahead of time, right? So I assume.
Yeah. So we had a full-time stunt team, and right from early on in pre-production, they were coming up. They were following what was in the script, which was a lot of it was quite detailed and
Yeah.
prescriptive, but also infusing it with their own, I guess ideas for, the things that they would want to see in a movie, which is great, because it's filmmaking is awesome because it's such a collaborative process, is what I love about it. And so, when we're not all there to achieve one person's vision. I don't think it's about bringing on the best people for the job, and all contributing to that vision. And so, yeah, I was very keen when the suggestion was, well, let's give this character a bit more of a martial artsy kind of feel, and but for this character, it's all going to be the wrestling styles, and it's going to be powerful and strong and stuff. And so there's a varied amount of styles in there, I guess, which is something that's quite unique. And talking about Fritz and his own training, what has he done? What has he learned? And Uli was really good about trying to figure out what does Fritz know? How has Fritz been trained as a kid? He's learned how to wrestle and stuff, but since then, over the last 20 years, what's he been doing? Kind of mixed martial arts, maybe, and for fitness kind of stuff. Yeah. So it was dream come true to be able to work through all of that stuff. And my kind of the style that we went in with the DOP and myself, we were like, we don't want this to be all a cutty kind of Jason Bourne style action. Yeah. We want this to be more longer takes on certain beats. So we would go in knowing, okay, we're going to shoot this part of the fight sequence from this angle, and that's it. Then we'll move on to the next beat. Yeah. So that was kind of our approach.
I read a review of the film, and I think the title for the article was pathos among the punches. So like, like kind of like, it's like, in a way it's like, I mean, this is again a very universal story for like, prodigal son returns, or like, someone who, like, it's like, a sense of like reconciliation, memory and all that stuff, of going back to your roots, can you talk about kind of like, kind of these, I guess, ingredients in this film, of going back home to reconcile past, I mean, maybe, just guilty feelings or what have you. But in a way, it's like, the film, even though more so, it's because it's a brown story, of like, going out and leaving your, and like going out, and, maybe joining the, going into the mainstream, or like leaving your roots, and like, you can talk about that, and like, kind of I mean, in a way, this is like, like, this is universal in the sense, like, John Cougar Mellencamp, Jack and Diane. It's always about, like, it's like going, like leaving your roots, or like, nostalgia of the past or what have you, and coming back home. I mean, talking about this in a kind of more of a brown or Maori lens in this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. It's, yeah, you're right. It's a very universal story, and I think from a brown perspective, there's always the saying, "Don't forget your roots." It's very much I guess in this, how Fritz has left the cul-de-sac in New Zealand and gone to Australia. I mean, that's a very common occurrence. Well,
Right.
it was in the past. Now, obviously, you can't. But it was a.
I mean,
It
people
was a.
call it like the brain drain. People,
Yeah.
yeah, basically, yeah. So
Yeah.
go
Yeah.
ahead, sorry.
That's right. And there is, you do end up. Yeah. Is it dispossessed of where you came from, where you what your culture is, what your community is. For myself, I don't speak Maori, and that's I guess a result of the culture being taken away from my mum, who grew up, at a time when speaking Maori was frowned upon. And so she wasn't taught.
To assimilate.
Yeah. And so when she grew up, when she was old enough, she moved into the city, and essentially it was a very kind of Caucasian European upbringing.
Sure.
And so, in a way, what I've been doing in my creative career is doing a lot more work that is focusing on the kind of the brown experience. It's what my wife and I are drawn to. I mean, it is our life. We're still surrounded by a diverse cultures. I'm part Maori, part Chinese, and part Pākehā, which is Kiwi Caucasian. Yeah, and so I don't know if I'm answering the question, but it is that for me it's still about returning to your roots and paying respect from my perspective, returning to my roots in South Auckland, where I grew up. It's paying respect to the community that I was brought up in.
Yeah, I mean, here in the U.S., I mean, especially with this festivals, it was started, in a political sense to promote, arts and culture, but also, filmed works, creative content, from the Asian Pacific Islander, community, and from the experience, and that, in a sense, we are, as Asian Pacific Americans, or APIs, it's still, a struggle to kind of get our place at the table, when it comes to mainstream culture. I mean, in New Zealand, I mean, you have the, a very, you have the, public and private support. You have the New Zealand Film Commission. You have, artists like yourself, and also like, you have a very deep legacy and foundation when it comes to support for Maori film content, when it comes to TV or film, what have you. Do you see that kind of like sea change being, I mean, for me as an outsider, not from New Zealand, I see that as much more prominent in New Zealand, and in, a lot of that content or a lot of that work it's traveling overseas, I think maybe this is more from your own mission statement or your own mandate when it comes to producing more brown stories. But I mean, you may have come from maybe from your younger self when you were a young artist, like, oh, I should like kind of like also, ditch my brownness and then kind of assimilate more into the mainstream. Do you see a lot of artists doing that, or do you see that changing, that kind of like attitude changing now in New Zealand?
Yeah,
And there's more of a sense of diversity, and
Yeah. I think it is a time of change for Pacific and Asian and Maori practitioners in New Zealand. There are, for one thing, there are more of us, and we are fighting for the opportunities. It's not because of the way the systems have been set up and have been operated over the last 100 so years, with in terms of film and TV and the creative arts. We aren't at the point where we have big companies or anything. We don't have big production companies that are solely run by Indigenous or Pacifica or Asian people, but we're getting there, and it's a good time, I think, to be a brown practitioner. There are more roles for Māori, Pacifica and Asian actors. There are more directors and writers. The opportunities we still do have to fight for, and we do have to fight for autonomy over our stories as well. So those things are ongoing, but to a certain degree, I agree that we do have more of a I guess opportunity in a way, in a sense, than other countries. Definitely, there is more acknowledgement there that we are capable, and and have great stories to tell, and that we need to be able to tell them ourselves rather than having someone else kind of over here owning all the IP, but we're just doing the work, that kind of thing. Look, Roseanne Liang had her film Shadow in the Cloud,
which
done
is a
really
fantastic
well.
film. I saw it Toronto.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're kind of getting out into that space, into the genre space. Obviously Taika Waititi, but there are other films. We've had a couple of films at the Asian Pacific Film Festival as well, Waru and Vai, and some film at Chelsea when Stanley had made a film in Waru, and Ainsley Gardner, Bri Grace Smith, they've just finished co-directing a feature as well. So we're I think the capacity building side of things is working, and we've just kind of got to get to that next step where we're owning everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's great. I love to see that trend. And you're definitely building a movement that, kind of like helps us all, like in a way, so thank you for that. But finally, for your film, The Legend of Baron, it's like, this is like, you sold it to the US. It has a US distributor. Can you tell us when, people can watch it here at the festival, but, when is it going to be released in the United States?
It is, we were picked up by Gravitas Ventures for a North American release, and the plan is for release on December the 4th, which my understanding is that it'll be going into theaters, which is crazy. I think that's amazing. And hopefully there are some people who are able to go into theaters and watch it, because that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, who knows what if or at least Los Angeles County, if theaters will be open by then. But drive-ins are, and I think this is the perfect drive-in movie.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Drive-ins are super, super popular here in Southern California. So I can definitely, I totally vouch for this film, regardless of, watching it, in the theater or whatever, or on TV, but definitely in a drive-in. It'll be so much fun. That'll be the perfect venue for it. So, okay. So thank you again, Kyle, for joining us all the way from New Zealand. So before we leave, I just want to just say, don't forget this film is still viewable now. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. Viewing window closes Sunday night. Enjoyed this conversation, the festival lineup. Please consider donating to Visual Communications. Your support will help sustain our year-round operations and programming. Go to vcmedia.org for more info. For the most recent updates on the festival, please visit festival.vcmedia.org or follow us on social media at VC Film Festival. And don't forget to tag us on hashtag LAAPFF 2020. So, Kyle, thank you again for being part of this Q&A. And we love this film, and we definitely look forward to sharing this film, of course, here at the festival as festival audiences watch it, but also for the December 4th release.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay, your film, but in the United States. So thank you again, Kyle. We look forward to seeing your future work.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care.
Bye.